you a bigger window to catch the problems and maybe limit the damage. And we've also decoupled now the systems, right? By keeping a separate system for maintaining the water, the RO water, and coupling it with this dosing pump. Same thing with calc washer. Oftentimes people do this. They'll take their RO unit, feed that into the calc washer, and have that dumped into their tank. Now you end up with a bigger problem. Now you're not only just adding water, you're adding calc water into it, which has a very high pH. Okay. So same thing. Any failure of this is going to result in dumping a lot of calc into it. And this has happened to now in the last 2 years. Two of my friends who have been hobbyists for over 20 years. Okay. I'm like, how could you see this? Sometimes we don't. Right? So a better design might be, hey, I'll keep this subsystem separate, fill up the reservoir, use a dosing pump. Okay. Not only that, I'll put the dosing pump on a timer. I can even think about putting a pH probe and monitoring the pH of the water, the tank. If the pH goes too high, we can shut the dosing pump off. Okay. So it gives you several levels of failure before your system completely fails. Heater chiller problems. Okay. Umpteen number of times. Heaters always get stuck in the on position. Okay. It's happened to me several times. You buy these cheap heaters, they cost $10. You can trust your $1,000, multiple $1,000 system to a $10 component that has a tendency to fail. No. Right? So what I started doing was, I can't find quality heaters. I've looked around, they all have issues. So the other option is to add more control. So what I did was I looked around. These are commercial grade temperature controllers made by Ranco. They cost like $50, $60. Okay, not very expensive. I plug all my heaters to this, okay, and let this control the heater. And then I add another level of redundancy in there, another level of control. I set my heater to turn up at maybe 1 or 2 degrees higher than this. So in case the Ranco fails, at least I may have a chance of stopping it with the heater controller. Okay. And you can do the same thing for the chiller. And again, you can increase the reliability of the system by adding a couple of these. Instead of running one heater, run multiple heaters, put them all on the Rancos. Okay. Or you can put these Rancos in series and have one Ranco shut off the other one. Okay. So there's different combinations you can do. The other one, and this is another one that's caught a lot of people by surprise, got taken me by surprise. Oftentimes we're using probes for monitoring things. Okay. Your water level drops, your probes are now out of the water, okay, and you don't know good readings, and now you start making decisions on those readings. Right? Your heater, for example. If your heater probe is not in the water, it's going to read your room temperature. Which is cooler than your tank, it's going to turn your heaters on. Okay, a really good friend of mine, another one who's been in the hobby for 20 years, he lost his whole 110-gallon tank this summer. And I said, what happened? He said, I was gone on vacation, there was somebody taking care of my tank. The temperature probe fell out of the tank. Okay. So it's reading room temperature, it kept the heaters on. So even having a Ranco controller doesn't mean, okay, that your problem will go away. Right? There's still this element that you have to measure the temperature. So one of the things I always tell people, attach your probes, tie them up. Okay, don't just drop them and leave them hanging. All right? Especially if you tie them up, there's a less chance that they will, you'll forget that there's less chance for them to get pulled out accidentally. Especially when somebody else is taking care of your tank. They can accidentally pull things out and not even realize that something got pulled out. Okay. The other one is keeping these probes submerged. If you have a temperature probe in your sump, the water level drops and your temperature probe gets exposed. Right? It's going to start turning your heaters on. Right? So one of the things I've started to think about this, and I think this is a good idea. Maybe I should attach these temperature probes to like a styrofoam float and have them float in the water on the top. So that way the water level goes down, the probe goes down with it. Okay? And there's less chance of that probe sticking out of the water, okay, and turning my heaters on. Chillers, same thing. One of the problem with chillers is if you run them without water flowing through them, you can freeze them up, right, and destroy your chiller. And chiller is an expensive piece of item. But I was going through some catalogs and I found these switches that are pretty cool, right? Aqualogic makes these water flow switches. So as you're feeding the water flow into the chiller, okay, if there's no water flow, it'll shut the chiller off. So these are designed to protect your chiller if there's no water flowing through the chiller. It's from running your chiller dry. So there's no water going through your chiller. You can put it in front of a pump too. Yeah. So basically it's a flow switch that detects as water flowing, and there's a switch there which you can then use to activate something on and off. So $100 investment or so, maybe even less, can save your $500 or $1,000 chiller, okay, from freezing. Water on the floor, we know that's a big issue, right? Lots of reasons this happens, from siphons get blocked, hoses becoming unclamped. Okay, that's happened to me. All right. I was in Europe, work. And in the middle of the night, phone rings. My wife. I said, "What happened?" She says, "There's water everywhere. I don't know what to do." I said, "What do you mean you don't know what to do?" "Oh, what do you mean there's water on the floor?" So I said, "How can there be water on the floor?" We walked through this whole thing. Well, one of the hoses, the hose clamps had rusted through. Okay, it's salt water. These cheap little clamps, 35 cents a piece at Lowe's, rusted, broke open, and that hose just lit off. It's pushing water out. Okay. Now my wife has to call my friends who are going to come and fix this in the middle of the night, and now she's really mad at me. It's even worse, right? So, what we need to know is, there's going to be water on the floor. Are there ways to detect it? And yes, they are. You can buy things like these water bugs, okay, that you can set on the floor. They sense water on the floor, and you can have them go set off an alarm. They can make a loud noise. You can use them for automatically turning things on and off. Oftentimes, skimmers overflow. That's another one. Okay, I have that happen all the time. Especially some of these downdraft skimmers and things. Some chemistry change in the water. You put food, you adjust the skimmer because it's not skimming properly. You over-adjust it. You go to bed. Next day in the morning, there's water on the floor. Right? So avoid some of those kinds of things. Get these water bugs. You can have them some of them you can hook them up to your controller. You can have your controller then call you, okay, and things like that. Make loud noises. How am I doing for time? Running out of time. So here's a good idea designed for a siphon break. This is what I'm doing with all my tanks now. Okay, people always say, siphon break, what do you do? Well, the pipe's going to go into the water, it's going to feed the water. Drill a small hole at the water level, okay? And that'll give you the siphon break that you need. Well, with me, two things happen. One, I never know where my water level is going to be. So my hole never lines up with my siphon, with my water level. So it's either squirting out and creating salt splash, or it's too far submerged and a lot of water goes into my siphon. Right? So what I started doing, and then the other thing that happens is, if you don't clean that hole, algae grows on there, and eventually it gets blocked. Okay, so when you need it, it's blocked. So one of the things that I've started doing is, this is what I do now. I buy a tee. This is the water coming back into the tank. I tee off. It's a reducer tee, and then I put a little elbow there. That elbow is on threads, so I can swivel that thing. So that allows me to adjust it to the water level. And since it's such a big hole, it doesn't get clogged easily. And secondly, it's sitting right on the surface, so it breaks the water siphon very quickly. I don't get too much draining back into my sump either. losses due to power failure. This is a big one. Okay. So here are some suggestions on what you can do. There are these pumps, again, they're fairly cheap, 10, 15 bucks, I think. These pumps, you plug them into the wall, right? They sense electricity and they don't turn on. When the electricity dies, okay, these go into the battery mode and they start pumping in air. So if you drop a few of these stones in your tank, the power goes out, you still have air being pumped into your tank.
Sanjay, just a word of caution about the hurricane. It's a great pump, but the battery that it comes with totally sucks. You only get about 15 minutes on it when it gets older. So I was a tractor supply. I bought a rechargeable battery of the same makeup. You can get 14 hours out of it.
Yeah, I haven't used the Hurricane ones, I've used the other ones from Silent Air.